I bought my dream home at 62. The very next morning, my own children showed up with an advisor to divide my inheritance. I was standing in my new kitchen, still surrounded by unopened moving boxes, when the doorbell rang at 9:13 a.m. One day, I'd owned this house for exactly one day. I thought maybe, just maybe, my children had come to celebrate with me, to see the place I'd worked 27 years to afford, to understand what this moment meant. I opened the door and found my son Marcus standing on the porch, not quite meeting my eyes. My daughter Elena beside him, wearing that tight professional smile she uses when she's about to deliver bad news at her marketing firm. And between them, a man in an expensive charcoal suit, carrying a leather briefcase that probably cost more than my first car. "Dad," Marcus said, his voice carefully neutral. "This is Richard Holloway, financial planning specialist. We thought we should all sit down and talk." My stomach dropped. I'd spent 27 years as operations director for a mid-sized manufacturing company. Survived a divorce at 51 that left me with almost nothing because I'd been too trusting, too focused on keeping the peace. Spent the last 11 years rebuilding from scratch, saving every dollar by skipping vacations, eating at home, driving the same Honda Accord for 9 years, living in a cramped apartment while my ex-wife got the house we'd built together. This house, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a garage I could actually use, a backyard with mature oak trees was my reward. My proof that starting over at 51 wasn't an ending, it was a beginning. I'd signed the papers yesterday at 3:47 p.m. The realtor had handed me the keys with a warm handshake. "Congratulations, Mr. Chen. You earned this." I hadn't even finished unpacking the kitchen boxes yet. Now my children were standing on my porch with a stranger who looked like he specialized in managing other people's money. "Come in," I said, because what else could I say? They settled around my new dining table, the one I'd bought specifically because it was big enough for family dinners I'd imagined hosting. Richard opened his briefcase with practiced efficiency and pulled out a folder thick with documents. "Mr. Chen," he began in a voice that was smooth and rehearsed, like he'd given this presentation 100 times before. "Your children have expressed some concerns about your financial future. They want to help you organize your assets in a way that protects them long-term. Estate planning, asset protection, making sure everything is properly structured." Elena jumped in, her marketing voice activated. "Dad, we've been doing research. At your age, you need to think about these things responsibly. What if something happens? What if you need care? We don't want everything you've worked for to just disappear into healthcare costs." I was 62 years old, not 90, not even 70. I'd run a department of 43 people for over 2 decades, managed multi-million-dollar budgets, negotiated contracts with suppliers across 3 countries. I'd retired 8 months ago with a solid pension and healthy 401, but apparently, signing my name on a mortgage made me incompetent. "This isn't criticism," Marcus added quickly, sensing my silence. "It's just practical. You've made a big investment. We want to help you protect it." Richard spread documents across my table. Trusts, powers of attorney, healthcare directives, asset transfer agreements. Every page had little sticky flags marking where I was supposed to sign. This wasn't a conversation. This was a transaction. Elena kept nodding like everything was already decided. Marcus had his phone out, probably calculating something. I let them talk. Let Richard explain various scenarios, nursing homes, medical expenses, estate taxes, in that calm, professional tone that made it sound like I was already incapacitated. When they finally paused, I asked one question. "At what point did you two decide my life was over?" The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. Richard coughed. Elena looked offended, not embarrassed. Marcus set down his phone with deliberate care. "Dad, that's not," Elena started. "Then what is this?" I gestured at the documents. "I bought a house yesterday. You're here this morning with a financial planner talking about protecting assets from healthcare costs. I'm 62. I ran marathons until my knees gave out at 58. I still swim 3 times a week. My doctor says I'm in better shape than most 50-year-olds. We're not saying you're not healthy now," Marcus said, his voice taking on that patient tone he probably uses with his kids. "We're planning for the future. My future, not yours." Elena's professional mask slipped slightly. "This house represents a significant portion of your net worth. If you ever need long-term care, the state could put a lien on it. We'd lose the family property." There it was. Not, "You'd lose your home." Family property. They were already counting it as theirs. I looked at Richard. "How much are my children paying you for this consultation?" He blinked. "That's between me and my clients. Your clients are sitting at my table, in my house, trying to convince me to sign documents I haven't reviewed, creating trusts I didn't ask for. So I'll ask again. How much?" "Dad," Marcus tried to interrupt. $3,000, Richard said carefully, "for comprehensive estate planning and asset protection services." $3,000. They'd spent $3,000 on a consultant to reorganize my finances without asking if I wanted their help. "Did you ask me if I needed estate planning?" I said quietly. They looked at each other, not at me, at each other. "We wanted to surprise you," Elena said, "with a gift, professional help." "I don't need a surprise. I I need respect. We respect you, Marcus said, but his voice said otherwise. We're trying to help. No, I said, standing up. You're trying to control something you're afraid of losing, but it's not yours to lose. It's mine. Richard started gathering his documents. Perhaps we should reschedule when everyone's had time to think. No need, I said. Thank you for coming, Mr. Holloway, but I won't be requiring your services. I walked him to the door. He left quickly, probably sensing the tension. When I came back to the dining room, my children were still sitting there, looking stunned. You're making a mistake, Elena said. Maybe, but it'll be my mistake. We're just trying to protect you, Marcus added. From what? Living my life? They left shortly after, with stiff hugs and tight voices. Elena mentioned something about thinking about this seriously. Marcus said, we'd talk soon. After they drove away, I stood in my empty living room, empty except for unpacked boxes and furniture I'd carefully selected, and my hands started shaking, not from fear, from clarity. That wasn't a loving visit. That was the opening move in a campaign to manage me like I was already incompetent. And that night, sitting at my new dining table with a cup of coffee I'd made in my new kitchen, I made a decision that would change everything. The next morning, I called Michael Torres. Michael had been my attorney during the divorce 11 years ago. Sharp, thorough, mid-50s, with 23 years of practice in family law and estate planning. He'd helped me navigate the worst period of my life with competence and surprising empathy. James, he said when he answered, haven't heard from you in years. How are you? I bought a house. Congratulations. That's wonderful. My children showed up the next morning with an estate planner, trying to get me to sign my assets into a trust. Silence on the other end. Then, did you sign anything? No. Good. Don't. Can you come to my office today? I met him at 2 p.m. in his office downtown, the same place where we'd hammered out my divorce settlement. He'd added more diplomas to the wall, a certification in elder law, a fellowship in estate planning. I told him everything: the house purchase, the morning visit, the documents Richard had spread across my table, the way Elena and Marcus had talked about family property and long-term care costs. Michael made notes the whole time, his expression growing more serious. James, what your children tried to do, it's not illegal, but it's concerning. They're treating you like you're already incapacitated when you're clearly competent and healthy. What would have happened if I'd signed those documents? Depends on what was in them, but typically, an asset protection trust means transferring ownership to the trust. You'd still benefit from it, but control would shift to whoever's designated as trustee. In most cases I've seen, that's the adult children. So they'd control my house. Potentially, yes. They could make decisions about selling it, renting it, using it as collateral, all under the guise of protecting it for your benefit. My coffee had gone cold in my hands. What do I do? Michael leaned back in his chair. First, you need to understand your own estate. What assets do you have? What's the total picture? I pulled out the summary I'd prepared. The house, $485,000 purchase price. My $401, $387,000. Pension $2,000. $840 per month for life. Savings $43,000. My old Honda Accord paid off. Some personal possessions. Total net worth approximately $915,000. Not wealthy, but comfortable, secure. Michael reviewed the numbers. You're in excellent financial shape for someone who rebuilt from nothing at 51. Your children have no legitimate concern about your ability to manage your assets. So why are they doing this? Because $900,000 is a lot of money, and people get strange when they start thinking about inheritance. They see it as theirs, not yours. They start planning their future around money you're still using to live. What should I do? Michael pulled out a legal pad. We create your own estate plan, on your terms. Clear, documented, impossible to contest. We specify exactly what you want, who gets what, and under what conditions. We make it airtight, so no one can claim you were incompetent when you made these decisions. Will that stop them from trying to control things while I'm alive? That requires different documents. Healthcare power of attorney, who makes medical decisions if you can't. Financial power of attorney, who handles your money if you're incapacitated. But here's the key. You can specify conditions. You can require multiple doctors' certifications of incapacity. You can name independent trustees instead of family members. You can build in protections. I don't want my children making decisions for me unless I'm genuinely unable to. Then we'll structure it that way. And James, we'll document everything. The fact that you came to me the day after their visit, the fact that you're thinking clearly, making rational decisions, protecting yourself appropriately. If they ever try to challenge your competence, we'll have a paper trail showing you were proactive and thoughtful. I left his office 3 hours later with a plan and an appointment scheduled for the following week to draft documents. But I didn't tell Marcus or Elena. I just observed. The calls started 2 days later. Marcus first. Dad, have you thought more about what we discussed? I'm handling it. How? I'm consulting with my own attorney. Pause. You don't trust us? I trust you. I don't trust the process you started without asking me first. He tried to argue. I kept my responses short. Eventually, he gave up. Elena called the next day. Dad, Marcus said you're being stubborn about the estate planning. I'm being careful. There's a difference. We hired Richard pressured to help you. We spent money on this. I didn't ask you to, so now we're the bad guys for trying to help. You're not bad guys, Elena. You're just not listening. This is my life, my house, my decisions. Fine, she said, her marketing voice cracking slightly. Make your own decisions, but don't blame us when things fall apart. The calls continued for 2 weeks, sometimes concerned, sometimes frustrated, always with an undercurrent of urgency that made it clear they were worried about something specific. I still didn't tell them what I was doing. I met with Michael 3 more times. We drafted comprehensive documents, a will that was clear and specific. 70% of my estate split equally between Marcus and Elena, 20% to charities I'd selected, 10% to a fund for divorced men over 50 who were rebuilding their lives, something I'd learned about from a support group I'd attended years ago. Healthcare directives that required certification from 2 independent physicians before anyone could make medical decisions on my behalf. Financial power of attorney that didn't activate unless I was certified incompetent by 2 doctors, and a court-appointed guardian ad litem reviewed the situation. Everything was structured to protect my autonomy while still providing for my children. But I also added something else. I want to create a foundation, I told Michael during our 4th meeting. What kind of foundation? Something that helps people like I was 11 years ago, divorced, starting over, feeling like their life was over at 50. I want to create a resource center, maybe a small fund for emergency housing assistance, something that proves life doesn't end when a marriage does. Michael smiled. That's a good legacy, James. How much would I need to set it up properly? Depends on the scope, but you could start with a relatively small amount, maybe $50,000, and build it over time. I thought about my $43,000 in savings, my pension income that exceeded my expenses by about $1,200 a month. Let's do it. I'll fund it with $30,000 now. Set it up as a charitable foundation with independent trustees. Your children won't be happy about this. My children wanted to control my assets to protect their inheritance. They're about to learn that inheritance isn't guaranteed. It's earned through respect. 3 weeks after the initial visit, I invited Marcus and Elena to dinner. They arrived together, which told me they'd been talking, coordinating, probably strategizing. We made small talk while I served the meal I'd prepared, nothing fancy, just pasta and salad, the kind of simple dinner I'd made 1,000 times when they were growing up. After we ate, I pulled out 2 folders from the drawer in my sideboard. I wanted you both to know that I took your concerns seriously, I said. So, I consulted with my own attorney, Michael Torres, the one who handled my divorce. We've created a comprehensive estate plan. I handed them each a folder containing copies of the key documents. Elena opened hers first. I watched her face change as she read. Confusion, then calculation, then something harder to read. Marcus was slower, methodical, reading every word. The silence stretched out for almost 3 minutes. This isn't what we discussed, Elena finally said. Exactly, I replied, because my life isn't for negotiation. You gave away 20% to charity, Marcus said, his voice tight, and another 10% to a foundation I'm creating. Yes, that's our inheritance. No, I said quietly, that's my money. Your inheritance is whatever I choose to leave you, which, if you'll notice, is still 70% of everything I have. Split equally, more than fair. Elena was still reading, her finger moving down the page. What's this about physician certification for healthcare decisions? It means you can't make medical decisions for me unless 2 independent doctors certify I'm genuinely incapable. Not just old, not just inconvenient, actually incapacitated. You don't trust us? Her voice cracked. I don't trust the process that brought Richard Holloway to my door at 9 in the morning, one day after I bought this house. I don't trust the impulse that made you spend $3,000 on an estate planner without asking if I wanted one. Marcus set down the documents. This foundation, what is it? A resource center for divorced men over 50 who are rebuilding their lives, emergency housing assistance, legal referrals, job placement help. All the things I wish had existed when your mother and I split up and I was living in that studio apartment, wondering if I'd ever recover. That's what you're spending our money on? Elena's voice had gone cold. It's not your money, it's mine, and I'm spending it on something that matters to me, something that will help people who are where I was 11 years ago. Marcus's face had turned red. This is insane. You're throwing away our future. No, I'm living mine. That money should stay in the family. Elena stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. It is staying in the family, I said calmly. The family of men who need help, men who were told they were failures, men who started over and discovered life doesn't end at 50. Richard Holloway's business card was still on my counter where I'd left it after that first meeting. I picked it up and handed it to Marcus. Here, since you're so worried about financial planning, plan your own life, build your own wealth. Stop counting mine like it's already yours. They stared at me like I'd become someone they didn't recognize. Maybe I had. We were trying to help you, Elena whispered. No, I said. You were trying to help yourselves. Marcus grabbed his jacket. His hands were shaking. You'll regret this, maybe, but it'll be my regret, my choice, my life. You're being selfish. I'm being honest. There's a difference. Elena's eyes were wet, not with sadness, with anger. We gave up Richard's help because you said you'd handle it. And this is how you handle it? By cutting us out? I'm not cutting you out. You're getting 70%. That's more than most children receive. What I'm cutting out is the assumption that my life belongs to you, that my house is family property, that my decisions need your approval. Fine. Elena's voice had gone flat. You want to play it this way? Fine. But don't call us when you actually need help. When you're alone in this big house, wondering why your children don't visit. She walked to the door. Marcus followed, stopping briefly to look back at me. You're making a huge mistake. Then it's mine to make. The door closed behind them. I stood in my dining room, my house, my space, my choice, and listened to their cars start and drive away. I didn't feel sad. I felt free. But the battle wasn't over. 2 days later, I got a call from someone I didn't know. Mr. Chen, this is Patricia Whitmore from Riverside Adult Protective Services. We received a concerning report about your welfare, and I'd like to schedule a home visit. My blood went cold. What kind of report? I'm not at liberty to discuss the details over the phone, but someone has expressed concern about your ability to manage your affairs. We're required to investigate. Into the court in Finder Sis. Someone, my children, when would you like to visit? Would tomorrow at 10 work for you? Yes, I'll be here. I called Michael immediately, told him what was happening. They're escalating, he said grimly. Adult Protective Services can investigate anyone, but the reports are usually made by family members claiming elderly abuse, self-neglect, or incompetence. I'm none of those things. I know, but we need to be prepared. I'm going to be there with you tomorrow. We'll document everything. And James, this actually helps us. How? Because if they're filing false reports with APS, it demonstrates their real motivation. They're not concerned about your welfare. They're trying to gain control through official channels. That's going to look very bad if this ever goes to court. Patricia Whitmore arrived at 10:03 a.m. the next morning. She was in her late 40s, professional but warm, carrying a tablet and wearing county ID on a lanyard. Michael was already there, in a suit, with his briefcase. I'm Michael Torres, he said, handing her his card. Mr. Chen's attorney. I'm here to ensure this process is fair and documented. She didn't seem surprised. That's fine. Mr. Chen, may I come in? I showed her around. The house was clean, not perfect, but lived in. Moving boxes were still stacked in the garage, but the main living areas were organized. Kitchen stocked, bathroom clean, bedroom neat. How long have you lived here? She asked, making notes on her tablet. 3 weeks. I'm still unpacking some things. And you purchased this property yourself? Yes. I can show you the deed if you'd like. She interviewed me for 45 minutes. Questions about my health, my daily routine, my social connections, my financial management. Michael sat quietly, occasionally making notes. I answered everything, honestly. Told her about my pension, my retirement from the manufacturing company, my regular doctor visits, my swimming routine at the community center. Mr. Chen, the report we received suggested you might be experiencing cognitive decline, that you'd made impulsive financial decisions without proper planning. Do you feel that's accurate? No. I saved for 11 years to buy this house. I consulted with a real estate agent, got a mortgage I can easily afford with my pension, and hired inspectors to review the property before purchase. There was nothing impulsive about it. Have you had any recent cognitive assessments? I had a full physical 2 months ago. My doctor can provide records if needed. Everything was normal. She made more notes. Can you tell me about your relationship with your children? I looked at Michael. He nodded slightly. My daughter and son visited the day after I bought this house, I said carefully. They brought an estate planner without asking if I wanted one. When I declined to sign the documents he presented, they became upset. I consulted my own attorney and created my own estate plan. They were unhappy with my decisions because I included charitable provisions instead of leaving everything to them. Patricia's expression didn't change, but she made extensive notes. Do you feel safe in your home? Yes. Do you have anyone who checks on you regularly? I have friends from my swimming group. I have a neighbor, Robert, who I talk to most mornings when I get my newspaper. I have regular contact with my doctor. I'm not isolated. And your children? They've been calling. We had a disagreement about estate planning, but I'm not in danger from them. I'm just not doing what they want. She nodded. Mr. Chen, I appreciate your honesty. Based on what I'm seeing, your clean, well-maintained home, your clear communication, your organized finances, I don't see evidence of self-neglect or incompetence. I'll be closing this case with no action required. Relief flooded through me. However, she continued, I do want to note something for your records. False reports to APS can be considered a form of harassment, especially when they're made to gain control over a competent adult's assets. If this happens again, you may want to consider legal action. Michael spoke up. We'll be documenting this visit as part of ongoing estate planning. Thank you for your professionalism. After Patricia left, I sat down at my dining table, hands shaking. They tried to get the state to declare me incompetent, I said. Yes, and it failed, badly, because you are clearly competent, well-organized, and thoughtful. Michael pulled out his own notepad. But James, this tells us something important. Your children are willing to use official channels to try to control you. That changes our approach. How? We need to be more aggressive about protecting protecting your autonomy. I'm going to recommend we add additional documentation letters from your doctor, cognitive assessments showing you're sharp, financial records showing you're managing everything appropriately. We build an undeniable case that you're fully capable. Why? Because if they're willing to call APS once, they'll do it again, or they'll try for a conservatorship, or they'll claim you were incompetent when you signed your new estate documents. We need to make it impossible for them to win that argument. Over the next month, I did exactly what Michael recommended. I got a full cognitive assessment from Dr. Sarah Chen, no relation, a neuropsychologist with 19 years of experience, scored in the 94th percentile for my age group. I got letters from my primary care physician, Dr. Robert Martinez, confirming my excellent health and mental acuity. I documented my daily activities with the detail of someone running a corporation, swimming logs, grocery receipts, bank statements showing responsible financial management. Michael assembled everything into a file that was nearly 2 inches thick. If anyone ever questions your competence, he said, we have overwhelming evidence to the contrary. The second APS report came 5 weeks later. Same process, different caseworker, same questions. This time, I handed the caseworker David Kumar 6 years with APS, a folder containing copies of everything we'd assembled. I believe this visit is related to ongoing family conflict, I said calmly. These documents should address any concerns about my competence or welfare. David reviewed the file for 20 minutes, then looked up at me. Mr. Chen, this is some of the most thorough self-advocacy documentation I've ever seen. You're clearly competent and well-organized. I'm going to file a report recommending that future complaints from the same source be flagged for potential harassment. Can you tell me who filed the report? I can't officially confirm the source, but I can tell you that repeat reports from family members in estate disputes are unfortunately common and often baseless. After he left, I called Michael. They tried again, I said. Good, because now we have a pattern. 2 APS reports, both dismissed. That's harassment, James, and we can use it. Use it how? We file for a restraining order requiring your children to stop interfering with your life and medical care. We document the harassment, and we make it clear that if they continue, there will be legal consequences. They're my children. They're adults who are harassing you to gain control of your assets. That's not family love. That's financial abuse. I thought about Marcus and Elena, about the kids who used to build blanket forts in my old living room, who'd cried when their mother and I split up, who'd both struggled through their own difficulties and come to me for help. When had they stopped seeing me as their father and started seeing me as an obstacle to their inheritance? Do it, I said. Michael filed the restraining order petition the next day. The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks out. In the meantime, my children's attorney, they'd hired one, a corporate litigation specialist named Gregory Wells, sent a letter claiming I was being manipulated by my own lawyer. Michael responded with a letter attaching all my cognitive assessments, medical records, and the 2 APS reports that had been dismissed. The back and forth continued until the hearing date. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Judge Helen Morrison presiding, 22 years on the bench, known for being thorough and no nonsense. Marcus and Elena sat on one side with Gregory Wells. I sat on the other with Michael. We hadn't spoken in 2 months. Michael presented our case methodically. The timeline of events, starting with their unsolicited visit with Richard Holloway, my decision to create my own estate plan, their unhappiness with my choices, the 2 APS reports, the pattern of harassment. Gregory argued that they were concerned family members acting out of love, worried about their aging father making impulsive decisions. Judge Morrison listened to both sides, reviewed the evidence, and asked pointed questions. Mr. Wells, she said, your clients filed 2 separate APS reports alleging incompetence. Both were dismissed. The caseworkers found no evidence of cognitive decline or self-neglect. What evidence do you have that Mr. Chen is not competent to manage his own affairs? Gregory hesitated. Your Honor, our concern is that he's being influenced by his attorney to make decisions that harm his family or his children's inheritance. Both, Your Honor. Judge Morrison looked at the medical records in front of her. Dr. Sarah Chen's cognitive assessment shows Mr. Chen scoring in the 94th percentile for his age group. His primary care physician reports excellent health and mental acuity. He's managed a successful retirement with no financial difficulties. He purchased a home with appropriate due diligence. What specific evidence do you have of incompetence? Gregory had no answer. The judge turned to me. Mr. Chen, why did you change your estate plan? I stood up. Your Honor, the day after I bought my house, a purchase I'd saved 11 years for my children arrived with a financial planner I'd never met. They tried to convince me to sign documents creating trusts and powers of attorney that I hadn't requested and didn't understand. When I declined and created my own estate plan with my attorney, they became angry because I included charitable provisions. I'm leaving them 70% of my estate. They're upset. It's not 100%. And the foundation you created? It helps divorced men over 50 rebuild their lives. I was in that situation situation 11 years ago. I know how hard it is. I want to help others who are where I was. That's a worthy cause. She looked at Marcus and Elena. Your father is 62 years old, in excellent health, demonstrably competent, and managing his affairs responsibly. He's chosen to allocate 30% of his estate to charitable causes. That's his right. The fact that you disagree with his choices doesn't constitute incompetence. She closed the file folder in front of her. I'm granting the restraining order. Marcus Chen and Elena Chen are prohibited from contacting Adult Protective Services or any other agency with false claims about their father's competence. They are prohibited from interfering with his medical care or financial decisions. They may maintain reasonable family contact, but any future harassment will result in contempt charges. She looked directly at my children. Your father worked 27 years, rebuilt his life after divorce, earned this house and his security. You are not entitled to control his choices simply because you might inherit someday. If you continue this behavior, you may find yourselves inheriting nothing at all. Is that clear? Yes, Your Honor, they both mumbled. Mr. Chen, the judge said to me, if they violate this order, you file immediately. Understood? Yes, Your Honor. We're adjourned. In the hallway outside the courtroom, Marcus and Elena didn't look at me. Gregory packed up his briefcase quickly and left. Michael stayed by my side. You okay? He asked quietly. I think so. Elena turned back, her face wet with tears. Dad, not here, Michael said firmly. The restraining order allows family contact, but given the court proceedings, I recommend you communicate through attorneys for now. She looked at me like I'd betrayed her. Maybe I had. Or maybe she'd betrayed herself by forgetting I was a person, not just a future inheritance. I drove home alone, back to my house, with its unpacked garage and quiet rooms. That night, I sat on my back deck, the one I'd dreamed about for years, and looked up at the oak trees swaying in the evening breeze. My phone rang. Robert, my neighbor, saw your car pull in, he said. Want to grab coffee tomorrow? I'm buying. Yeah, I said. I'd like that. Good. 9 o'clock, the cafe on Maple Street. After we hung up, I sat there for another hour, thinking about everything that had happened. My children had tried to control me because they feared losing money they'd never earned. The state had investigated me twice and found nothing wrong. A judge had told my children to back off in language they couldn't misunderstand, and I was sitting on my deck in my house, living my life on my terms. 3 months later, I got an email from Elena. Subject line, I'm sorry. The message was long, rambling in places, but the core was clear. She'd been in therapy, working through things, realizing how her fear about money, her mother's influence, her own insecurities had warped her perspective. She asked if we could talk. I wrote back, yes. Coffee next week? We met at a neutral location. She came alone, looked tired but calmer than the last time I'd seen her. I was awful to you, she said, after we sat down. Yes, I convinced myself we were helping, that you needed protection, but really, I was afraid. Of what? That you'd spend everything, that there'd be nothing left, that I'd end up like you did after the divorce, starting over with nothing. Elena, you have a good job, a husband with a good job, 2 healthy kids. You're not me at 51. I know, but Mom always talked about money, about how the divorce ruined her financially, how you'd taken everything. Your mother got the house we'd built together. I got nothing. I rebuilt from scratch. I know that now. My therapist helped me see how Mom's narrative shaped my fears, how I projected her anxieties onto you. I sipped my coffee, thought about my ex-wife, who'd convinced our children I was the villain in our divorce even though she'd initiated it and taken the majority of our assets. What about Marcus? I asked. He's not there yet. He's still angry, still thinks you're being manipulated. By Michael. By everyone who's not him. Michael helped me protect myself from people who wanted to control my life. That includes your brother. Elena nodded. I get that now. And I'm not asking you to change your estate plan or anything. I want to be your daughter again, not someone calculating my inheritance. That's all I ever wanted. We talked for 2 hours. It wasn't perfect. There were still tensions, still unresolved issues, but it was honest. When we left, she hugged me, really hugged me, not the stiff, obligatory embrace from before. I'm proud of you, she said quietly, for the house, for standing up to us, for the foundation, all of it. Thank you. Can I come see the house sometime? Actually see it? Not show up with an agenda? Yeah, I'd like that. 6 months after the court hearing, the foundation was officially launched. The New Beginnings Center for Men in Transition, small office space, 1 full-time counselor, emergency housing fund, legal referral network. I'd put in $50,000 total more than my original plan, but I'd been managing my pension income carefully, and it was worth it. The first client was a 53-year-old man named David, who'd lost everything in a divorce and was living in his car. The foundation helped him get temporary housing, connected him with a job placement service, and gave him access to counseling. 3 months later, he had an apartment and a steady job. You saved my life, he told me, when he came to the office to thank me. No, I said. You saved it. I just gave you a bridge to walk across. Elena came to the opening event, brought her family. Her husband shook my hand and said, this is really something. Marcus didn't come, but Elena said he'd been asking questions. questions, softening slightly. Maybe someday he'd understand, or maybe he wouldn't. Either way, I'd built something that mattered, something that would outlast my children's disappointment and my ex-wife's bitter narrative. I'd taken the money they'd tried to control and used it to prove that life doesn't end at 50 or 60 or any age where people decide you're no longer relevant.